Hello and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where Dr. Philip Chase and I try to remain culturally relevant and talk about a TV show.
I think it's probably a fruitless effort in my case, but anyway, here we are.
Well, we're here to talk about episode 4 of season 2 of The Wheel of Time. And
Yes.
Philip, do you remember the name of this episode?
Oh, AP. I can find out.
Daughter of the Night. Daughter of the Night.
Oh, okay. All right. You actually knew. Were you testing me? Is that what that was?
Yes, let's go with that. Not that see, what people don't understand, I think, with a lot of the discussions we have, it's not that we're sitting here and we have like all of these notes and we're going to talk about it. It's no, it's two old men going, "Oh yeah, we meant to talk about that. Let's just have a chat."
Pretty much two old guys whose memories are a bit dodgy at times, but
Who are you? Why am I
yeah.
talking to you?
So anyway,
Right. So let's actually get on with what we're meant to be doing, which is talking
let's do
about
that.
episode 4. So with this episode, I liked this episode more than episode 3.
Okay.
And one of the things I liked about it was not only was there a lot of forward momentum in terms of big plot things, there were
Sure.
revelations about and clarifications of things that we maybe suspected.
Hmm.
And also, there were some really nice moments in this for, you know, things from the books that we love. For instance, Hopper. And
Oh yes, Hopper. Yeah.
uh, so there was a lot going on in this episode, but there was still a lot of cohesive storytelling, all of the things that I kind of like, and some really subtle things that they did that maybe we'll get onto. How did you feel about the episode just in general?
In general, I thought it was a strong episode. I've basically I don't think I was um down on the show at any point this season. I felt like, yeah, I was okay. I was on board with episodes 1 and 2, and I'm a little more excited now with episodes 3 and 4. I'm actually feeling like, oh, this has some nice momentum now, and I'm invested and enjoying. Actually, starting to see more and more, and probably because of our discussions too. But I'm starting to see more and more, I think, of the long game that the show creators are, I think, what they're trying to do, and I like a lot of it. So I'm having fun. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we break it down into some of the major elements? Let's start with Perrin's story because it has
Or
Hopper.
wait, there was the prologue. Did you want to talk about the prologue or?
Well, why don't we talk about the prologue a wee bit later?
Okay,
Because
where it fits with that thread. Okay.
yeah. So, Perrin's story. What did you think about Perrin's aspect of the story here?
So with Perrin, and he's with Elias and the wolves, and you already mentioned Hopper, and that was a really a very heartfelt scene. I felt that connection there. That he's told for the non-book readers, Elias, I thought in a very nice sort of subtle way mentions he'll tell you his name when he's ready, because Perrin says, "Well, what's his name?" And he'll tell you his name when he's ready. And then Hopper a little bit later gives him the, as they're doing it in the show, which is, I don't know how else they could do it visually. He sees the image of the wolf hopping up and down, and he realizes, oh, that's it. He's telling me his name. He's learned. So Perrin, it's a learning moment for Perrin. It's a kind of a nice heartfelt moment as well. And so I thought it was well done in terms of the progression of Perrin's character arc, him learning what he is, and how to, you can really see the mentor relationship with Elias is really getting underway here. So yeah, I liked this part a lot, and it'll be interesting to see how Perrin develops, but also how he gets brought back into, because I think things are looking like in this episode, like everything is converging towards where the Shan Chan invasion is happening. And so it'll be interesting to see how Perrin gets there. So yeah.
And just in that sequence, there were a couple of really nice moments that I enjoyed. One is, the wolves are obviously eating the raw deer. They're
And
having
so is Elias.
raw venison. Elias is tucking in, and then Perrin's kind of sitting there quite sheepishly with a little sort of venison steak on the twig, going, "Okay, I'm going to cook mine." And Elias is just, I almost wish
Good.
that after Hopper had done, because he'll tell you his name when he's ready, and he's sitting there. Then Perrin gets the vision, looks across. Elias isn't getting this vision, so we get a little more insight into, well, they can do direct communication as well as general communication. We get
Nice.
shown that. I
Yeah.
almost wish that their Perrin had taken a bit of the meat and thrown it to Hopper,
Uh-huh.
shared it, but. And
Which
then you
was
had the wolf Hopper just kind of look up at Perrin, going, "Yeah, told you my name. Like, come on, catch
yeah.
up." So it was a lot of fun. And the other aspect of this sequence I liked was, again, they brought back Lila. They have not forgotten this. It's not just,
That's
oh,
really,
we
yeah,
took
nice
Lila off just to
follow-up.
do this thing. It is continuing to have relevance. It's
Yeah.
not giving short shrift to Lila as a character. It's making sure that this relevance is there, and then connecting it to Hopper. Hopper lost his mate too, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
part of the bond that they have.
That was
So,
lovely. Yeah.
so I thought a lot of people do not like what they did with Perrin at the very beginning by giving him Lila as a wife and then killing Lila off. But
Right.
it has continued to have relevance, and it's not just being discarded, it's not being ignored, it's not just, oh, well, we did this to do this thing and now we're moving on. this
Right.
this is integral and core, and so it is being embedded into the entire arc. And that is the sort of thing that I actually like to see. If they had just killed Lila off and then that was kind of the end of it, he's got his motivation now. That's fridging. That's really bad use of female characters to propel a male storyline. And
Right.
with so many of these things, yes, you can identify the trope, but tropes in and of themselves are not necessarily bad. And I think this shows a good way of using that aspect, particularly in an ensemble cast. It's giving different motivations to different characters, and it's spreading them all out. It's not that, oh, we're just going to do this one thing and that's how we motivate male characters. It's using the full range of expression. And I think people fixate on, oh, that's that trope. That trope is bad,
Right.
without thinking about how it's being used, how it's being integrated. You don't have to like it, but
Yeah.
there is, I think there is slightly more nuance to it than sometimes discussion lends itself to.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, that's an important point. You don't have to like it, but I think we should acknowledge that they are returning to it, and they are, I think, doing a thoughtful job of making this still part of Perrin's character. So yeah, I personally think it works great. It's part of his conflict, and they've given him a layer of conflict because he still feels responsible for her death. He still feels the guilt, and he still feels like, what if I succumb to, the stakes are raised in a way, because yeah, Perrin in the books is conflicted about his wolf side versus his human side. I think that that loss from the beginning adds to that conflict in some interesting ways. So
And also, it's a nice, clear representation that you can give to viewers who are not familiar with the material,
right.
because otherwise it would be a lot of Perrin talking about why he's conflicted, instead of, we've been shown this, we know what the thing is, so anytime he mentions it, it brings that weight back continually.
Right.
Otherwise, like, oh, I'm big and I'm afraid of hitting people. There are, you can do it, it's just, this is a very neat way to do it. And
Hmm.
again, as you said, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like this particular use or this particular trope. But I think it's being handled quite well. And I don't have a major issue with it. And in this instance, there are
Right.
other instances in other narratives where you go, really wish you hadn't done that. Because
Yeah.
it seems lazy, it seems trite, it seems disposable. And this doesn't feel disposable. This feels emotive and has weight and continues to have weight. But
Agreed.
with this whole sequence, again, some of it could have felt very exposition heavy, very, I'm now going to explain what a wolf brother is. But there was a nice blend. It felt natural. And it was the balance between Elias telling him things and then seeing the visions and then understanding the visions that he's getting in the wolf language. It's balancing an info dump, which we don't like, with exposition that's being integrated in. And there's always going to be a fine line sometimes between elements of it, but
Yeah,
I thought it fitted neatly. And you go, that's, I think it worked well. So that was something that I actually quite liked about
with a
this
little
was
bit of humor in there too. So that was, yeah, it was lovely. Yeah.
um, right. Do you want to talk about Matt and Min and then the White Tower stuff? Because I think that
Sure.
flows neatly together. So
Okay,
Matt
let's
and
do
Min
it.
then.
Matt and Min, so it's increasingly clear that Min, as we mentioned in the previous discussion, it's very clear now that Min is basically being forced to do what she's doing, leading Matt somewhere. Being forced not only by Leandrin, but it's clear now, we'll talk about Leandrin, I'm sure, some more. It's clear now that Leandrin is working for the Forsaken. Probably Ishmael is the one ultimately giving the orders there, but Leandrin is strong arming Min. And it seems like Leandrin herself, well, we'll talk about her character because I love what they're doing with her actually, and I think the actor is doing a fantastic job of conveying so much, and that so much nuance actually in that character, which I love what they're doing. So with Min though and Matt, I'm still enjoying the banter and the dynamic that's going on between them. Min very guiltily is manipulating Matt, getting him drunk, and leading him on. And the scene with her and Ishmael, and it plays on her whole seeing in the future thing, and his ability to visit people's dreams, and in the I'm gonna just call it the dream world of this of Wheel of Time, because I'm gonna mispronounce it like last time. But yeah, I liked what was going on here. Seeing it's a fresh kind of and I think a lot of that is not in the books. What they're doing with Min particularly, and how they're integrating her into the story. So it's intriguing, and I'm kind of wondering, okay, what are interesting what they're doing with Min here. So yeah, and it's not entirely out of her character at the same time, even though they're doing new things with her as in terms of her role, and what's going on with her and Matt. At the same time, it feels almost like, yeah, this kind of fits the Min that I know from the books too, in a way, doesn't it? So yeah.
So one of the things that I really liked about this was you got that flashback in the dream of how Min was treated,
Carnival attraction. Yeah.
how she felt about her
Yeah.
gift or her curse.
Yeah.
And when we think of the number of times now we've been shown instances or people have talked about how their power actually has a downside.
Yeah.
So, you know, Rand and male channelers having this madness is the curse that goes with male magic. We can see in Perrin's arc that he fears losing himself to becoming a beast, a wolf, a monster. And even the whole joke about, am I going to turn into a wolf? And Elias is like, don't be so stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was funny. With the Aes Sedai, we've seen, and in this episode in particular, the fact that Aes Sedai agelessness is this curse. And we saw that with Leandrin and her son, that you watch your loved ones grow old and die, and you don't grow old. That there's a cost to a lot of these things. And so
Yeah.
there's nice parallels being built up between all the different forms of power and people recognizing the cost of it.
Yeah.
And I like that the show was actually emphasizing this. It's not just, oh, I have wonderful magical power and this is awesome. This is a much more mature, grown up way of addressing that aspect.
Yeah.
And I think
And
it
they,
adds.
like you say, they do it consistently. You see it with Leandrin earlier and her son. who's an old man now, and you see it with Moraine and her sister. There's that portrait in the house, and you know that's the little sister who's an old woman now next to Moraine. And you just see that moment of her looking at that picture. I thought, oh, that's a nice touch there, to emphasize exactly what you're talking about, the cost of being an Aes Sedai. They're doing a great job of delving into that, along with, we're going to talk about this too, because we're going to talk about land in a bit, but along with the warder bond and what that entails, and the losses that accumulate, and the benefits as well. So yeah, they are doing a good job of visiting, of exploring the consequences of power.
And because of this, the direct parallels that are brought up between Rand's storyline and Min's storyline. Min wants rid of her power. She doesn't want it. She wants to live a normal life. What have we
Right.
seen Rand pursuing? How can I control this? How can I get rid of this? That that dynamic, and you suddenly see these parallels in these two characters, and go, I wonder what they have in common. And I think they're not belaboring it. It's not the most subtle thing in the world, but again, it's a TV show for a general audience.
Yeah. Also, shout out for the dice playing. They've got Matt playing dice and not doing very well at it yet.
And actually, that was something that was quite curious, because obviously one of the things that we all kind of remember about Matt is that he has uncommonly good luck, because they haven't really delved into that aspect of Tavarin.
But that makes me think that they are going to, the fact that they just sort of put that in there with him, in the dice. I'm thinking, okay, good. They're going to get to that.
Because I think there will be this moment that will be a turn for Matt's character.
Matt needs that moment, yeah.
And it leads me to sort of believe, and again, neither of us know, we haven't seen everything yet, but right. They started Matt off in quite a dark place, and he wasn't really the full articulation of Matt from the books, but he still had aspects of it. But right. he was a bit different. He was a bit darker. He was a bit less charming, and and as we're seeing him go along, he's, because of the things that happened in season 1, he hasn't stepped up to assume that position of trying to be a hero. Yeah. And I think it's giving him this very interesting arc that there will be a moment and he will make the decision and he will become more fully heroic. And then we get, an arc, an actual arc, instead of it just being, he's like this all the way through and just different things happen to him. I
think that's happening for him and for Rand and for Perrin, and to some degree for Egwene as well. I mean, they're all sort of just very clumsily making their way at times toward their potential. And there's going to be that moment where, especially for Matt, I feel it's probably going to be more sudden for him than it is for the others.
And I think that's one of the things that can be very difficult when you have read a complete series, that you know how the characters end up, and you kind of project that back over the whole length of their story. And even when you reread, you're reading with the knowledge of who the character becomes, so you see more of those elements even early on.
Yeah, the books, there's quite a long arc. They go from idiot young people to what they become. So yeah.
And so with simplifying a lot of what they've had to do, because 4.4 million words in 64 hours.
That's a lot of words.
Yeah. I think it's creating more definite arcs, and you do that by making the differences starker. And I think it's interesting because it's going to show a nice development over time.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to see. We want to see progression, not just of plot, but of characters learning and growing. And that can be very difficult to wrap your head around, to appreciate when you know what it is in the books.
Yeah.
But I think it works well, and it's fun and it's interesting. And one of the things that I really liked about the Min sequence was, she said, "I'm expecting a visitor tonight. Let me know when they arrive."
Right.
And yes, she did get a visitor, but not physically, in her dream.
Not through the door. Yeah.
And it was one of those subtle things. She basically, and that was the moment we knew that Liandrin had told her someone was going to visit her tonight. She was to expect it. And it is therefore confirmation that Liandrin is a dark friend.
Yeah.
There's no if Sir Butts about it now, we now know confirmed at that point, which again then makes what Leandrin does later to Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine.
And oops, Elaine as well. Like, oh, you're a complication. Blast. You know.
Um, and now we have confirmation just with that one line that Min had and the fact that Ishmael shows up.
And also the fact that, well, this is later, but Leandrin clearly drops that, oh, by the way, we had a little bit of news about your friend Perrin was captured out there. And oh, well, too bad, you know. And then, of course, she knows Nynaeve is going to go racing off and knows that Egwene is going to follow her. And she's putting them where she wants them. So, yeah, doing her manipulation at the behest of Ishmael. Yeah.
And we know that Ishmael's involved with the Seanchan. We see all of
Yeah.
these things pushing in this direction, and it's nice that they are connected. We're seeing these connections between the different things, and they
Yeah.
are lending support to each other in terms of narrative.
Yeah.
Because even the manipulation that Leandrin has, if I tell Nynaeve this, I know that she is going to do that, and
Right.
she can't help herself. So she and Egwene are going to end up here. So if I'm here, then I can get it's planning ahead based
Yeah.
on what we know about different characters. Look
Right.
at how Marine's little sister plays her. Ah,
Yeah.
you've been
That was
avoiding
a
me all
little bit
day.
of
So
gotcha. Yeah.
so I'll leave the thing on there because she'll look in there and then she'll avoid me and then she'll come and sit here and I'll be waiting for her. We and you see these mirrors of all of these different sort of
Yeah.
techniques, different themes, these different things that they're exploring in the different storylines.
Yeah. Little sister has been paying attention and is quite clever herself. But one thing I want to go back to just briefly, because it was from the third episode, and I remarked on that moment when Nynaeve seemingly disappeared inside the arches, and you saw the two other Aes Sedai leave, and Leandrin has this moment of just pure like rage and frustration and fear and even cries. And I thought that's incredible because there's such an array of emotions, some of them conflicting, being portrayed on that face right there. I still stand now. I know that one of the emotions was fear because she was supposed to deliver Nynaeve to Ishmael. So she's some of that is definitely like, you know, she's scared because you don't disappoint the Forsaken, right? But I still say that some of it was genuine sadness because I think there's a piece of this really bitter, angry woman who actually there's some affection there for Nynaeve. I still contend that Leandrin is has a soft side deep down in there somewhere, and that they have this kind of interesting bond going on. And yes, Nynaeve knows Leandrin's secret about her son, and so I find it very interesting.
And I think you're exactly right. There are a lot of conflicting emotions. And I think this is something that is part of modern storytelling that most of the time we genuinely enjoy, which is
Yeah.
it's not mustache twirling villain. Oh, I am a dark friend. I have sworn to the dark one, and therefore now my personality is completely changed and I am just evil. It's no, you did that, but you're not always going to be happy about the things that you have to do. You can be conflicted about that. Yes, you picked a side,
Look at
but
Min, very conflicted. I mean, much more
and
so. Yeah.
and that complexity then of yeah, that is the side. I do have to do these things, but I don't necessarily have to like them. I have to betray Nynaeve. That is something that I am going to do because I've sworn that I will do it.
Right.
I don't have to like it. I don't have to enjoy it.
Right.
But
And we
it's
don't know how Ishmael is bending her arm. He might be saying, I know you have a son, and guess what I'm going to do if you don't do what I want, you know. So it's interesting. Yeah.
so I like that complexity because you picked up on it, you were commenting on it, and we see that in so many of the relationships and the characters now. It's
Yeah.
not as simplified or as straightforward as, well, I'm going to do this, and this is the thing that I'm going to do. There are competing emotions, competing tensions, competing desires and drives. Marine wants to serve Rand and help Rand, but she also has loyalty to the Aes Sedai and the Tar, and she also has her relationship with Swan. And
Right.
you can see she's being pulled in multiple directions, but she still has her focus, her drive. She has made this decision, but there are costs to it, and those costs are not necessarily ones that she is happy with.
Right.
That that's what a fully rounded character is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that the fact that they are managing to make all the as many of the Aes Sedai as possible feel very individual. They are making the warders feel individual. That
Yeah.
they are distinct characters. Sometimes when we read books, and even with Robert Jordan's world, some of the Aes Sedai felt interchangeable.
Yeah.
Some of the warders felt kind of interchangeable. Here, they actually feel like very individual characters. We don't think that each Aes Sedai would basically react the same way. We see the differences. And I
Yeah.
think that's a very powerful communication of characterization that the writers and the directors and the actors have managed to get across to a viewer.
Yep. I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so anything more about Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine?
Yeah, well, we didn't talk about Elaine much, and I think that the relationship there between her and Egwene is becoming more and more for me compelling and fun. And I like how perceptive Elaine is. We talked about that last time, and how she refuses to give up on Egwene, even when Egwene is, is grieving and wants to be alone. And I think Elaine shows some wisdom for a young person, and I like that. I like that relationship. I like how she follows, how Egwene follows Nynaeve, and Elaine follows Egwene, and they all get in trouble there at the end with Leandrin saying, "Oh," and we know why Leandrin says that. We know why, because Elaine wasn't supposed to be there. And you're a complication, right? Because she's the heir to the throne, and somebody's gonna notice. So that's not cool. But she goes through with the plan anyway. Just add one more, So yeah, I like that a lot. I like the dynamic going on there in the tower, and looking forward to seeing where these characters go.
So one of the things I actually quite liked again about Elaine as a character is how perceptive she is, because
Yeah.
in her discussion with Egwene, and by the way, neither one of them know how to mop properly. I was disgusted at that lack of technique.
I mean, okay, Elaine, you can understand she's probably not had a lot of experience mopping, but Gwen, right, grew up in an inn, right?
Oh,
You
she
would
probably
think.
shirked all of her. If that was the state of how she mopped floors, that inn would have been stinking. But anyway, one of the things I liked was, again, Elaine is very perceptive, because when Egwene is talking about how she wants to support Nynaeve, how she wants to help Nynaeve, and Elaine is basically trying to point out to her, stop focusing on what you want. Listen to what Nynaeve wants, because she points out
Yeah,
you don't know what she went through. And Egwene's like, oh no, but I want to help her the way that she helped me. And again, Egwene is slightly, I wouldn't say self-centered or egotistical. It's more egocentric.
yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
can't really think about things yet from someone else's perspective. And so she's thinking, what can I do to help my friend? Because I love my friend and she's in pain and I want to help her, which is very noble. It's very good. And Elaine's kind of pointing out, have you listened to her to find out what she needs?
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
And I thought that
I
was
also love how, speaking of Nynaeve, I also really like how they follow through with this grief that she lived an entire life inside the arches, and she feels like it was real. And then she has this child that she remembers, and I mean, they don't just drop that, right? She's just not the same Nynaeve after that. And that stays with her. And I like how they make that a part of her now, that she's going to carry that with her now.
there was also a little fun moment where when Egwene first goes to Nynaeve and Nynaeve's in her accepted chambers, and Nynaeve pauses to put the ring on, and Egwene comes in, and one of the first things she does is she sees the ring and she goes to reach for it, like she's Bilbo meeting Frodo in Rivendell, going, "Can I just see my ring again?" And Nynaeve's like, "What? back off, bitch.
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah,
it was just such a wonderful little moment because of course that's Egwene's like, oh, let me see the thing. And again, it's not forgetting why she is there because that's what
right.
she's interested. And it's again, it's not a criticism of Egwene. A lot of us sometimes forget to listen to what the other person wants or what
Oh
the
yeah,
other person needs. So I liked how they built on that all the way through, but also showed that Egwene is loyal. And
yeah,
then the guilt that she has been feeling because she still believes Rand is dead. And she believes that if she had been better, she could have helped, she could have saved him. She's
yeah,
blaming herself
yeah.
for Rand's death. And of course, I don't think Nynaeve had ever considered that.
Yeah, and that's why she's determined not to let any of her friends down ever again. Right? There's
So,
guilt is propelling her as well as love and the desire to help her friends. Yeah.
so if you think about it, Egwene has this guilt thinking that she failed Rand.
Right.
Matt has this guilt thinking that because he turned his back on his friends.
Right.
Nynaeve is carrying all of this guilt about basically this child that she had that has died and leaving her parents behind and leaving Rand's dad in the
Tam.
Ham, leaving Tam behind. We can see how guilt about decisions and the weight of responsibilities is constantly a theme in all of these characters. And again,
Yeah.
that's nice thematic connection across things. And it
Yeah.
helps build that sense of cohesiveness to the storytelling because we recognize these echoes, these motivations, and parents' guilt about Lila. It
Yeah.
there's a nice, strong sense of connection. So I like these aspects of it.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about Leandrin then a bit more?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have nothing but praise for the way that character is not only being written, but the way the actor is delivering. And I think there's a lot of subtlety in there that wasn't necessarily, I don't remember her being that nuanced in the books. So I think I like what they're doing. You know, it's pretty cool stuff to see her her not quite reluctance, but there's a part of her that probably is not happy about what she's doing to these young people, manipulating them on behalf of Ishmael and delivering them like cattle, like sheep. Because yeah, I mean, we have to assume that there, as I said before, I think things are converging probably, and it seems like Ishmael's game plan is to corrupt these young people the same way. You could say that that foreshadowing was done way back in the first episode when you had that little girl, right? You had Ishmael manipulating, corrupting, an innocent little girl, and he's probably going to try to do the same things with the two rivers, right?
Yeah,
Folk.
yeah,
Yeah,
Emmonsfield. In Emmonsfield in the Two Rivers.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and again, there was a nice actual little drop here because earlier on they had described Ishmael as the most powerful of the Forsaken.
right.
But in, I think it's the Alana section, we're told that Lanfear is the most dangerous. And that, again, that is a really interesting distinction just to drop in because so often in fan discussions we go, who would win in a fight? Who's more powerful?
Right.
And making that distinction between just because you have power, you might have less power, but be more dangerous. And
Hmm.
remember what Leandrin had said to Egwene, which is it's not always the most powerful, it's the ones who live.
Yeah, yeah.
And so again, it's being more
And that's
nuanced.
advice. She's giving her advice in that moment too. Even as she knows she is leading this little lamb to slaughter, she's trying to help her survive this, I think, right? I mean, she's basically saying to her in a very vague way, yeah, when I deliver you, remember, you're going to survive, and surviving for Landrin means doing the bidding of the Forsaken.
And so what did you think of the whole sequence with Alana, the warders, and Lan?
Yeah, so I feel like Lan is being manipulated all over the place at this point, because you see he's sort of aware that his fellow warders are manipulating him, because he has that whole conversation with Alana when she sneaks up behind him. Not sneaks, she's just walking behind and he's taking a whiz. And I'm not sure why he needed to be taking a whiz in that scene, but whatever, you know. So he's able to
It was
perceive,
a
oh,
moment of vulnerability.
very much so. I mean, so much so that I was like, you know, I mean, that's not really. Anyway, he takes it in stride and realizes, because there is a little bit of tiny bit, I think, of tension because of Alana's acquisitiveness. Let's put it that way. In terms of, she likes her warders a lot, and potentially there have been some hints that she wouldn't mind having a third, you know, and even her I guess it's her family
Yeah.
members that we're seeing there. And it's like, oh, we're getting a third now, eh? You know, so they all know her proclivities. But so her coming up behind him, and then he basically says, yeah, I knew it was you, and here's how the dialogue would go if it were, I forget the warder's name. Ivan is one of them,
I've on a
and
Maxim. Or
Maxim, yeah, Maxim, I think. So if this were Maxim, he would do it this way, and then if it were Ivan, he'd do it this way. And I know you're all manipulating me, and so blah blah blah. But he doesn't know every which way in which they're manipulating him, and you're starting to wonder, wait, poor Lan is really getting, and because they do sneak in, find the prophecy about Lanfear, and it's a little bit creepy. You're wondering, what are they doing here? Are they just helping Moraine with Lan, or is there something more sinister maybe going on with Alana and her two warders, where they're doing something else? So yeah, I felt like there was a bit of a concern there for Lan, in the situation he's in.
so I want to talk through a couple of different things, just in general narrative terms that I liked about this. And the first is, so we now know what the prophecy was, that poem
Right,
that
right.
Bowman had brought.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
I know that I have a reputation for hating mystery box storytelling, and I dislike it as an overused or a technique that sometimes writers lean too heavily on. What I have liked so far this season is, yes, mysteries get set up, but then they get answered, because
Mhm.
it's okay to have this question has not been answered yet when you know the answer is coming, instead of the stop focusing on, if every episode had been, oh, what was that prophecy? They know about the prophecy and we don't, and it had gone on and on and on, I would have gotten increasingly annoyed. But each time there seems to be a mystery setup. Oh, Nynaeve has gone and done that thing, and she's disappeared into the arches. Whatever will happen. Oh, look, it's answered. And it's this asking the question, answering the question. And they can take their time. We can have patience. It's not the focus of the story. And that to me is the big, big difference between using a mystery box, which they did in season one of who is the dragon, thinking that that's going to drive the narrative. When for someone like me, that becomes increasingly frustrating,
Right,
because just just move on with the story. Why are you relying on this mystical question
right,
when it's not really relevant for a lot of what's happening? And so with this sequence, we get the full explanation of the poem. We then connect it to that prologue that we saw of Ishmael breaking, and again, it's conflating aspects of the breaking a seal and freeing a Forsaken. We
right,
realize then that that piece, the pieces that fell down around him, where that's what Doman had, which
right.
means that happened quite some time ago. It's not chronological, which
Exactly.
means that Lanfear has been around for a while. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so I had minor issues with that, because and you explained it perfectly, but and I realized all of that as well, but also chronologically it's way out of order.
Yeah,
This prologue scene, visually it was stunning, so I know why they put it where they did, because thematically it's well placed, because they're trying to drum up a little bit of, you know, drama in terms of land fear and all of that, and then it fits with the near the end of the show, when Lanfear is finally saying, "I'm a monster too," and we're getting the flashbacks to her being freed by Ishmael. So I get why it's placed where it is. I don't have a strong issue with that, but chronologically, it's way out of order, of course, because we know that because Lanfear has been around with Rand all this time, right? We
But
realize, oh yeah,
why
so
why is this an issue? This happened in season one as well, where we saw the birth of Rand
yeah.
partway through the
I don't
season.
think it's a big issue, but at first it was a little jarring, is all I think, and a lot of people might take issue with how jarring it was. But I know why they put it where they did, because again, thematically, it fits really well where they put it. Visually, it was pretty cool. And I think they're also establishing a bit of a hierarchy among the Forsaken. The fact that Ishmael is awakening her, even though she's the most dangerous, as you said. But there's, and maybe I'm just importing a bit of my book knowledge as well, but I'm expecting some rivalry among the Forsaken, right?
I
So
would
I
love
thought that was interesting.
I said I would love one of the other Forsaken to go, oh, okay, so he called himself the father of lies. Well, I'm the uncle of mistruths. And then it's well, okay, okay, I'm the
I'm the second
nephew.
cousin twice removed of miscommunication.
And then the Forsaken at the very bottom going, I'm the nephew of double entendre. They go, well, that's useless. And it's like, well, you took all the good ones. But
So
it's
anyway, yeah, I mean, I didn't have a huge issue with where they placed that, but and you have to realize, oh, okay, this happened a while back, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
But and that was one of the reasons why I like it. I
yeah,
think we sometimes get a bit overly fixated on chronological linear storytelling,
yeah,
and mixing it up every once in a while, and then giving the viewer the clue
right,
that so that they can decode it. That's what I really like. That so when we saw that sequence, yeah, initially we're watching it going, oh, what has he just done?
right,
And then we realized, no, 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 that's what he did a while back.
right.
And it confirms everything for the viewer. So I like that. It's getting us to engage with what's on the screen and not
And the
just sit
characters
there.
are just finding out about it too, so it fits where it is, because the other characters, the human characters in here, they're just finding out about her freedom, and so yeah, it
And
works.
and one of the other things that I liked is this glimpse into Alana's family. And if you
Yeah,
notice, it was all filmed in much warmer colors and tones. It was
yeah.
very warm. There's a lot of laughing, there's a lot of smiling, there's a lot of
It was
joking.
very South Asian, actually. Yeah.
And she is not removed from her family. And again, like Alana, the Aes Sedai, this powerful warrior, who is so respected and commands respect and attention and can order people around. And it's, yeah, I've just made dinner and we're now going to eat, because it's the family, and the family unit is different. And there are different dynamics at play. And
Right.
it's clear, like they joke, well, we thought you were getting older, when
Uh,
she still looks very young. And there's this wonderful warm family essence, and it is contrasted so neatly with Marine,
Rain
because
and sister.
all of those scenes are in cold colors, the blues and the grays,
Yeah.
and it is very cold and austere. And even the house, it has old style grandeur, but it's cold and fallen into disrepair, and it's empty and
Yeah.
vacant. Alana and her family and the warders, they're outside. There are kids running around playing. And even though it's a big cavernous space because it's outside, it
Yeah.
feels full. And so there's just this wonderful contrast between the two. These Aes Sedai do not live the same way. They don't think the same way.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I thought that was so neatly done, just in terms of the visual storytelling. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can agree with that. And you're absolutely right about the contrast with the Damodred household, which is it's a vast place and it's so empty, you know, and it's cold, and the relationship between the two sisters is pretty tense. So yeah.
Icy would probably be too warm a description.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, there's a lot of rivalry, jealousy, resentment. You left us. I had to rebuild this family. I had to do all this manipulating, and you just turned your back on us. And guess what? All those informants you think they're yours, they're mine now, right? It was like, ooh, okay. Yeah.
and again, we get to see that manipulation, that uh wills within wills, patterns within patterns, plans within plans, the
Yeah.
constant trying to outmaneuver your opponent, which so far, like Marine has been incredibly good at. And then we see that, yeah, her little sister knows a trick or two as well. And
And
it,
she's
it
also right. Moraine has neglected her family because she sacrificed essentially her life on for this mission, right? She sacrificed her. I mean, it's very resonant, I think, with a lot of people who are very driven to succeed or for some important thing, and they end up neglecting the people close to them. And it seems very fitting that the sister would feel that way.
and in some of it, like we see, because we've seen the treatment of Land by Marine,
Yeah.
even though I have a slightly warmer interpretation of it, I think, than you do, because I think she is trying to protect Lan. She is
Oh no,
trying
I
to,
agree with that. I totally see that. Yeah, yeah.
um, but we've seen her in quite a bad light of because she's mistreating Lan. She's mistreating someone we like.
Well,
Then
because though I think we as viewers can understand, she's doing it out of a concern for him. Yeah.
and then we see how she treats her sister. So when she arrives in, and it's we'll sit and have some tea, and it's I'm busy, I have to go and do this thing, and I have to go. And again, it emphasizes how driven she is,
Right.
but it's to borrow a phrase from Elaine, it's not a good look on her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But again,
Well,
it
it's what she's
puts
become, though. Yeah.
it puts Marine very much in that cold, manipulative, driven, costs be damned kind of mold.
Right.
And then
But
very
she's
neat,
doing it to save the world as she sees it, right?
yeah,
So
and very neatly, we see her talk with Logain.
yeah.
And in her talk with Logain, why does she offer them the knife? Because I know what it is like. I know what you
Be
desire
cut
because
off.
I know what everyone feels when they are cut off from the source.
So
From
for the viewer, not for Logain, but for the viewer, that's a confession
yeah,
on Moraine's part. Like, yeah, there's a big part of me that wishes I could just be dead right now. Right.
and
Yeah.
that is a brutal revelation. Of course, Logain has no idea that she doesn't have her Aes Sedai
Right.
connection
Right.
or her magic. And so he's just reading it as, oh, well, you must have studied people like me before. You've done this to people in the past. Whereas
Yeah.
we, as you point out, we know that's Marine being brutally honest about who she is, what she is feeling.
Yeah.
And we then decide, is that enough? Again, to add to this consideration of her actions, her character,
Mm,
does it does it mitigate some of those brutal decisions that she has made? And we realize that she is in an incredibly dark place
yeah. Yeah.
and is
Yeah.
still moving forward.
Which, that final scene too, where,
Oh, we're not getting there yet.
but I think there are ways in which I think that it was a bit abrupt, her introduction there. I get that she was on the trail, but I like the suddenness of it. But we'll get there, of her appearance there in that scene. But it adds to her willingness. Oh wow, Moraine really is ready to do whatever it takes, for this mission that she's undertaken. Yeah.
I did like the moment where Avavar gets up and she's getting ready, and then she settles herself in her little divan and she gets her glass of wine, and the footman comes in to say, "You have a visitor. It's too early for visitors, but clearly not too early for wine, you lush."
Yeah. 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 That's a good one.
uh,
Yeah.
and so there was so much about that, and again, it lent into I had mentioned Dangerous Liaisons the last time. It lent into that sort of court intrigue drama that we get in Dangerous Liaison. So that was highly enjoyable. And of course, one of the first things Marianne asked for is a very particular type of wine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because she
oh,
knows. Yeah.
why would she be asking for that wine? And of course, it is to take to Logain.
Okay. Yeah.
And we even see the challenge that she issues to Logain. And I think I'd mentioned that potentially Logain may be going to be stepping in to fulfill a certain role that Asmodean filled in
Yeah.
terms of the relationship with Rand.
Mentoring. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's still quite possible. Um, so I liked that sequence, that the tension between these two figures of Logain and Moraine. I liked how Moraine has been out of the city for a while. She is still smart, she is still capable, she is still powerful, but she is not the powerhouse in the city that she used to be.
Right. Very vulnerable.
And again, it contrasts that, sometimes people who have lived away from home for quite some time, when you go
Mm,
home, you've changed, but sometimes your family doesn't think that you have changed, but also they've changed. And there's sometimes a little bit of uneasiness as you try to renegotiate the role and relationship, particularly if you've been away for quite some time.
like in her case, like 50 years or whatever, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And so I thought it captured that awkwardness of the assumptions we make. Oh, but that's who that person is. And you go, well, I've changed. So they've clearly changed as well. Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And that came across as quite powerful storytelling. So let's talk about Rand and Lanfear.
Let's do that. Yes. Uh Rand is being led along as well by Lanfear, clearly. And I think that you were your interpretation of that scene from the previous episode where Rand and Lanfear make love and he's channeling, and that's a kind of a, I think you're right that was a dream, because in
What?
the moments,
Right?
it happens once in a great while, but every blue moon. No. I mean, yeah, I think you were right about that because of course, Lanfear is acting a lot too with Rand. We know that, or Celine, as he still thinks she is. But she acts surprised when he channels, and to get rid of the Fade that was about to kill them. Right? I mean, he burns it to a crisp using his power. And she acts like, oh, I didn't know you could channel, and and he's like, oh, but I'm not crazy, I'm not mad, I should have told you, but and so there was all that going on, and she's obviously knew the whole time what he was, but because he buys her act in that moment, it had to have been a dream earlier when he was channeling and they were doing their thing back in the inn, right? That had to, otherwise he'd say, but wait, you saw me channel earlier when we were, so yeah, so there's that. And of course, he is being led by her, and he is seemingly completely naive about what's happening to him. He's attempted to take control of the situation, and it hasn't gone too well yet. Logain hasn't really indicated that he's super interested in helping. So when they're in that cabin and they are attacked by the Fade, and what I wonder is who sent the Fade? Was it Lanfear herself, which is probably, I think, probably likely. In which case, she must have. I mean, maybe she didn't tell the Fade. By the way, this is a suicide mission because, if you're gonna come, you're gonna attack this dude because I want him to unleash his power. But that being the case, that poor Fade is basically like fodder there, because you have to think that she would have stepped in if Rand had failed, right? I mean, he was basically
Can you
being
imagine
set up.
can you imagine them all sitting in the staff room and it's
Yeah,
like, okay, Lanfear sent down a message saying that one of us has to go and attack the Dragon Reborn.
yeah.
And everyone going, actually, I am getting my
I have a
name.
dentist appointment. Sorry, yeah.
And it's, here, send Steve to do it. It's like Steve walks in. Did I miss anything? No, 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 no. By the way, just a simple thing. Just pop through that shadow over there. No reason at all.
Right. So that poor Fade got a bum job of having to attack the Dragon Reborn. So Lanfear does their thing and wants him to blood out the monster, so to speak. And then there's the whole kind of S&M thing going on in there where she's tying him down and he's like, what's going on? And and then he's increasingly fearful, but she's explaining with quite the grin on her face, well, I'm a monster too, and then so up to that, let's stop till there, and then we can talk about what happens immediately after that.
Oh, you tease. But there was a brilliant moment in the exchange between Rand and Lanfear when he says, I'll go away. It's where are you going to go? I'll go far away from here, because they say that when a man goes mad, he kills the ones he loves.
Oh, you love me? Yeah.
The look on her face.
Yeah.
As it's oh, so you do love me. And you go, that's Glenn Close Fatal Attraction all over again. Like,
yeah.
You see how she manipulated the entire train of thought to that point. And then she runs over and it's it is so well done. You can see.
I agree. She's doing a great job too. Speaking of really great acting, I think I don't know the actor's name, but I think she's doing a brilliant job as Lanfear.
And it is so calculating.
Yeah.
Because every beat of it, again, it's like the Aes Sedai go, we're going to manipulate people to do the things that we want. We see Liandrin do that. They have nothing on Lanfear. Lanfear is like 20 moves ahead of everyone else in how she's manipulating Rand. And I thought that was exceptionally well done. And even all of the things, oh, well, I never came up here as a child. That was all just a lie. And, she admits that she's been lying to him. And he's still like, oh, well. And then you look at this perfectly made up cabin and you're like, Rand, how dumb are you? This isn't her. What? How can you not see that there's a big setup here? If she hasn't actually been, she said she wasn't there in years, and it just so happens it's in perfect condition.
But he's been dusting. Yeah.
And, there are all of these moments, and Rand, like so many of us, we are blind until the reveal comes, and you then have to rethink all of the context.
Right.
And so in that moment where she says, I'm a monster too, and the air sort of blurs in front of her, we're in Rand's point of view, so we can't see the weave.
Yeah.
We can't see the weave that she's using, but we're seeing the effect it creates in the air.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's really nice that sometimes we are in the POV of someone who can see that type of magic. Sometimes we're in someone else's POV. And that has always been, it's a subtle technique. And I think it's one that can quite easily trip up filmmakers, because you have to remember with that effect, who is the one seeing it. Right. Because okay, let's talk about this moment. Lanfear, maybe she would have been a wee bit safer if her name had been Moraine Fear.
Maybe so. Just on the point of channeling too, though, their sexualizing of the channeling in the two scenes where Rand's dream and then Lanfear on top of him, it fits with the way they're portraying it as something that can just burst out in intense moments of emotion, like when Nynaeve, heals everybody in the first season, or when she weaves inside the what is it, the portal thing,
the arches.
The arches. Thank you. When she weaves inside the arches, we've seen how it comes out in these very intense emotional moments. I thought that was really cool. And then suddenly you have this moment where everything's like, whoa. And then suddenly, shock, the sword comes through her chest. And then, slits her throat. And it's like, whoa, talk about quietus interruptus, So it was really quite, I love visually everything. The whole scene was like, oh, that's really cool, and we saw that Moraine was on the trail, her arrival feels very abrupt, but I don't know how better to do it because having her come there, rescue Rand, and like, we got to get the hell out of here, boy.
But
And at
she,
first, of course, she's like, "You killed her," and so yeah,
and again, when he starts to channel, we're in his point of view. We see the weaves and we see the darkness. There was actually they had put blackness through his fire weave,
yeah,
and again, that's a nice touch. That the taint on the weave
yeah.
and his rage, and of course, Marine in a very bad position, but she's like, "That is Lanfear. I can't lie to you."
Right.
And even in
You
the
mean like
rage,
hanging by your neck on the wall is a bad position? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
and Rand suddenly is like, "Woo, right, woo," and you to go from oh yeah, sexy time with my girlfriend to okay, kinky sexy time because she's tying me up. Hang on a sec. What's going on with all of that weirdness around her? Now she has a sword through her. Rand, Rand
I mean,
maybe,
he's kind of taken aback a bit there, isn't he? Yeah, yeah.
and then to find out that it's basically your magic mum who's turned up to go. Your girlfriend is bad for you, young man. While
Right.
you're in bed with your girlfriend, like there's a lot of emotions going through Rand here.
I would say so. And one of the coolest parts is she says, "I can't kill her. Like, we need to get out of here now. I cannot kill her." And then you see the look on Lanfear's face at the end when her throat is slit and her eyes are wide, and suddenly you see the eyes darken, and you kind of see this like, yeah, I'm back.
And I would have to imagine that Lanfear
She
is going to
blinks.
be a tiny, tiny bit put out about
A
what
bit peeved. A bit peeved, do you think? Yeah.
a touch of irked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, I thought this was a really good sequence. B, they didn't hold off on the whole Lanfear reveal for ages and ages and ages. Again, introduce the character, let some time build up. Here is the reveal. And, this is mid season. This is our mid season sort of shocking moment, building up to this climax.
Oh, good one, AP. I like
Uh,
it.
and they haven't been drawing out a lot of the mysteries. And again, it's big development. So now we know there is another Forsaken. We know it's Celine Lanfear. We have heard these names. We've heard about these different people. The plot is moving forward. The story is moving forward. Character development is moving forward. It gives us time to think back on those earlier episodes where if you weren't a book reader, how were you meant to know all of this? And now
Right.
you can go back and have a look at those earlier sequences. And there aren't too many. It's not like asking you to look back over a whole season to rewatch every exchange. It's no, there's only a few sequences, but now you get how cruel she can be and why she wasn't put off by how the nobles were taking advantage of the hunters of the horn to try and get rid of the people from the foregate. Why she was so nonplussed, was like almost uh, admiring the plan.
Those nobles to her are a bunch of little kids.
Yeah,
They're
and
nothing.
you then see like all of those moments where she looks up around and like she's been doing something. She looks up, she sees, and then she shifts her position, her pose, all of those little moments from earlier on, and you
Right.
go, she has been playing a very long game.
Very long indeed. And I'm not sure you could put this together, so I won't. I'll try not to spoil it if you're just a show watcher and not a book reader. But hey, I think it's been emphasized enough that Lanfear has again and again and again talked about her old boyfriend, right? I was in love with someone. I was in love, and that that's important. Let's just put it that way, I guess, because I don't think it's necessarily apparent if you don't know the books who that old boyfriend was. But if you paid attention to the first season, actually, you could put it together, I think, because there is that flashback. But yeah,
So the fact that um Lanfear doesn't really die here because she's
right,
going to come back,
right.
it makes the Forsaken much more of a supernatural threat.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Um,
That doesn't
because
kill you? Okay. Yeah.
you can't get rid of them with normal means. Now, book readers know that there's a particular weave that can be used that is very destructive.
Right.
Um, but in practical terms, you don't have to worry about new bodies being made for them or anything like that. You can use the same actors. And these actors who are playing the Forsaken, both of the ones that we have spent time with, are really magnetic on screen.
Yeah,
And curiously, both of them are seductive in their own way.
true. Yeah.
Um, and I like that spin on the evil of this, because if it's like, oh, this is evil and this is going to corrupt your soul and it's all terrible, why would anyone ever sign up to that?
Yeah, yeah.
But when it's presented in such reasonable terms, and it's going to give you the things that you want, that's when it becomes so much more frightening.
Right, absolutely. One little clarification too, as we were talking, it occurred to me. So I said you were right about that dream of Rand's where he's got the coat on, right? That's not a normal dream though, is it? It's the Telon Rio, whatever. It's the dream world.
Yeah.
Like Lanfear is visiting his dream there and is interacting with him. And when she tells him, "How dare don't you ever leave me again?" That's really her talking to him. Even though it is in the dream world, that's really her saying, "Don't you dare do that." And that reaction speaks volumes about how she's going to feel when she gets up from, that moment where, "Oh, Rand left you again, sweetheart."
And, if Rand had a pet rabbit, I would be very worried about it.
Yeah.
So, all in all, and again, I think there are so many parallels, contrasts, and comparisons. Think of how driven Lanfear is and how driven Moraine is. It's
Yeah.
almost like they're opposite sides of the same coin, both
Mm,
absolutely devoted in their own way
right.
to Rand, but their motives are very, very different. They are both driven. They are willing to destroy everything around them. It's a wonderful parallel, but also great contrast. And
Yeah.
again, playing off of that is, I think, adds to the power of the storytelling. And again, as book readers, we can become quite fixated on, but that's different to the book. And yet,
Mm,
when you look at that scene, if, let's say, Lan had done that, if Lan had run into the rescue, and then it would have been appropriate to call her Lanfear, but it wouldn't have had the same thematic or symbolic resonance. It just
right.
wouldn't. If it had been Perrin, if it had been Matt, if it had been any other character. But the fact that it's Moraine is the thing that brings it to the fore. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's when there are deviations, and even drawing the elements from later on in the series to incorporate now, they're they're great. They're interesting. But I think we've rambled on long enough, my friend.
Yes, indeed. Yes. It was a lot of fun. And, I agree with your final point too. That was a really cool Moraine moment there, interrupting Rand while he was being Randy. And but this was a lot of fun. We probably indulged in a few too many puns, but it was a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward. This is going to be, I think, a very interesting season. If they can keep up this momentum from these last couple episodes for me, I think I might even be calling it a good show. So yeah, we'll see.
Uh, well, thank you very much, Philip. And for those of you still watching, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one.